This is not a drill.
The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
No Show fam, what's up? You're probably wondering, Joe, what's with that intro? And truth be told, I have no idea. I just always kind of wanted to do that, so I figured I would do it this episode. Um, Speaking of episode, what are we gonna talk about today? Oh yeah, what the is going on with gas prices and everything else, dude? Everything. I can't even afford to live no more. I'm about to just quit. But yeah, everything's going. Why is that? It's one of those. It's a daggum president, ain't it? Well, have no fear. We're gonna get into that. Secondly, thank everyone who emailed me. We got so many people's retirement account stuff straight, answered some questions, put them in some good investments. Man, that's gonna pay off, and I'm excited for y'all in the future. So, as with anything on this show, you had questions. Thank you for emailing me, texting me, calling me, and I'm glad we got that straight, man. Upcoming. So this is gonna kind of be a prelude, like a little intro into Rabbit Hole series, and I know y'all are into that. Joe, we've been waiting on you to start talking about politics, government. Well, here it is, folks. It's gonna begin today. Not so much today, but this is gonna lead in to the next episode, which is gonna be this super dark rabbit hole, and we're gonna see how far it goes. You're gonna love that. But today, let's go over some basics. Let's figure out why prices are so damn high. Okay, gas prices. Start at the beginning, shall we? First thing and most important thing to understand about this global commodity called petroleum, which gas is derived from, obviously. At their most fundamental level, gas prices are determined by supply and demand. Okay? So there are other factors, and we're going to discuss those later, but in general, most basic, they are determined by supply and demand. Whenever there's a high demand for gas and a lower supply, what happens to price? Shoots up, right? High demand, low supply, price goes up. Conversely, if there's low demand, high supply, what happens? Price drops. Okay? Pretty simple Econ 101, but let's expound on that a little bit. Like I said, a few other factors we're going to talk about, but in general, whether it's futures, whether it's policy, things like that, supply and demand, your main driving force. Okay? Oil supply. So another important thing to remember is, and I'm going to bring you back to maybe junior high science class or something, but oil, petroleum, renewable resource or non-renewable resource? Yes, non-renewable resource, if you remember. So Joe, non-renewable, what does that mean? That simply means once it's used, it is gone for good. Okay? Oil doesn't reproduce itself. All right? You have a limited supply here on Earth. Once that's gone, it's gone. Now, we've obviously, with technology, figured out how to tap wells that we did not have access to before, things like that. So we're finding more of it, but that doesn't mean that it's renewable. It still means once we use it, it's gone. So energy independence. You see this a lot on social media. We need to be energy independent. Da 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 da. To a point, I do agree with that. But just remember that we do not want to burn through and consume all of our reserves, especially our strategic reserves, things like that, because kind of be setting the future up for ultimate failure, right? Because up to this point, green energies, solar, wind, things like that, they're not that efficient. They're super costly. That's why we haven't switched over to them. They're not efficient and they cost too much. Oil is still the number one bang for your buck. Okay. Um, but like I said, we don't want to tap in, we don't want to just use up all our oil. That would be kind of silly. And like I said, future people gonna hate us. But that's why we buy from other countries like Canada, um, Mexico, OPEC, Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, aka the cartel, which by the way, they produce about half of the world's supply of petroleum. So they got a pretty big say in our supply levels and things like that, which obviously, like we mentioned, is gonna be an effect on our pricing. Canada, Mexico, Russia, even I think they account for about 8% of our imports, and we know what's happening there. We'll touch on that a little bit later as well. Okay, so why are prices going up so much higher right now? Let's go back to 2020, the year that changed our lives, right? What happened in spring of 2020? The Rona hits, right? What happens after that? Shutdowns. I ain't go to work and I'm in construction. Uh, Everybody, we were locked down, shut down. Was there any travel? Was there any plane rides, cruises? Were people using their vehicles? No, no. So, what happened? Was demand high or low? Of course, demand fell through the floor, bottomed out, right? Now, was anybody planning for all these shutdowns and stuff? No. So supply was here, demand went from here. Yeah, my hand just went off the screen. That's how low it was. If you'll remember, back in spring of 2020, summer of 2020, they were actually having to pay people to come get their barrels of oil for storage or whatever. You literally could not even give it away. That's how low demand was because everything shut down, right? So, like we talked about before, low demand, high supply, what happened to prices? They dropped, right? So that's why in 2020 we saw super low gas prices, okay? Now, the companies that were paying people to store and take this oil off their hands, uh, no one knew when the shutdown was going to end, right? So what did OPEC and all these other countries, including us, think we cut 1 million barrels? What did all these petroleum producing countries do? Well, they start cutting supply to try and match demand, kind of equalize the price, right? Because you don't have any demand for it, so you need to lessen the supply. Well, then what happens? Let's fast forward to 2021. Things start opening back up. Some lockdowns and shutdowns are lifted. Flight and travel begin resuming. Things started to sort of get back to normal. And then by the end of last year, what? Everything's pretty much back up in full force, right? So that demand that was super low all of a sudden explodes. Boom, demand's back up, greater than it's ever been. People wanting to get out of the house, they want to travel, do all they can. Demand shoots up. Well, what about supply? Well, they didn't know when the lockdowns were going to end, right? So supply was still trying to meet demand down here. So it was low. Well, now we have high demand, low supply. What happens to prices when you have high demand, low supply? They shoot up through the roof. So, at its most foundational level, that is what we're experiencing right now, right? So that's the main driving force. All the BS you're gonna see people post and this and that. And look, oh, I love hating on presidents, but in the short term, they can't really affect it as much as people would like you to believe. They can though, and we're gonna touch on that. But for the most part, everything we just went through, That's it. So continue to blame presidents or whoever you want for gas prices. I honestly don't care. But what I've just laid out for you is the main reason you're seeing what's happening right now. So, what else? You mentioned what else affects gas prices then? And like I said earlier, there are a few other factors in gas prices, okay? Although not as significant as the very fundamental supply and demand aspect. For one, and one of our all of our favorite topics, taxes, right? State and federal taxes, they're going to impact your gas prices, unfortunately. And they can be pretty significant depending on where you live, okay? For instance, Uncle Sam with the federal government at the federal level has been taking a hefty 18 cents per gallon of your gas prices, and I think it's like 24, 25 cents on diesel. So they're eating that off top. What you pay at the pump, they getting that 18 cents, boom, federal tax, right? There's also that pesky state tax, and we all know some of those states taxes are pretty significant, right? California, let's tack on another 67 cents per gallon. So all in all, you like 85 cents extra for state and local taxes in California. Louisiana, Texas, they're about 20% or 20 cents per gallon. So significantly lower depending on where you live in the country. You could be paying a way different amount than other people. Is anything else jacking up my gas cost? Oh yes, well actually there is. You didn't think we were done, did you? Um, Oil and gas, like any commodity, is traded and exchanged. Okay? Any commodity with value, it's traded in the market. So is gas. Kind of like stocks, right? Companies purchase these contracts, which are called futures. Okay? So you have two types, but basically companies are like, hey, we want gas at this price and we want to lock it in for this term. That's a hedge futures contract. Okay? And it's exactly what it sounds like I just described. We're going to get X amount of barrels for this price at a predetermined date in the future. You have two basic futures traders. You have the hedgers and the speculators. Like we mentioned, the hedgers are going to be your companies that they're worried about potential price increases. So they're going to order theirs under contract for that specific time at a specific price. The speculators, they're just like your market investors or you crypto maniacs out there. Uh, they're betting on the price to rise or fall, right? And they're speculating. That's called market sentiment. It means what is the overall attitude about where gas prices are going, right? So investors also play a part in determining our gas cost. And now that market sentiment is involved, if they think gas is going to drop, then they're betting those futures that they're going to drop. Same as people doing stocks. So that can have an effect on prices as well. Those are the pretty much the main factors. Brief mention of the Russia situation. It's a pretty extraordinary event. In other words, it's a one-off. We don't see company or countries invade other countries, on the daily. But like I said earlier, they do account for about 8% of our imports for petroleum. So cutting off that supply means what? We still have our demand. Just because we are not buying from Russia doesn't mean our demand isn't there. So we have to make that up. And hopefully we'll be doing that, you know, domestic production. I'm hoping, kind of like Elon Musk said, I agree with him there, rather than buying it from somewhere else. But that can have an effect. Um, the effect it's going to have on our prices probably lasts as however long this conflict does. Really ain't much you can do about it. But like I said, that's a pretty extraordinary event. That's not something that happens every day. So I'm not going to touch on it too much. What about these shitty presidents though? You know, um, I would have to do a daily podcast for a month straight just to outline my problems with this president or any other crappy president that you want to throw my way for discussion. Okay? There's plenty to hate on. Not just hate on, but these guys are complete morons. Okay? And we're letting them control way too much of what we should. But that aside, let's get into some of the nonsense I'm seeing on social media on the daily. I mean, it's hard for me to even open it anymore, y'all. I open it and I'm like, jeez, people, man, we have to gain intelligence as a society. And we have to realize who our enemy is. I'm not gonna get into that. I'm gonna say that for the next podcast, but Lord have mercy. Okay, so you can't really blame people because, as the actual politician saying goes, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? So these super high gas prices, it's an emotional issue. Gas prices are an emotional issue, man. They always have been. So this is the opposition's time to attack, right? Republicans have been force feeding the public that Biden's responsible for gas prices, and he may be to a certain point, but not to this drastic amount we're seeing, like we just discussed. But you know what? Democrats did the same thing to Republicans. Like I said, if gas prices rise while one side or the other is in there, you can guarantee the other side is going to attack that and blame them, whatever. Democrats did the same thing when it rose under Bush Jr., okay? This ain't new. It's a game they both play, Democrats and Republicans, and they all love to play it. They figured out how to tug at our frail little emotional heartstrings to conjure up hatred to the opposition. You know what I'm saying? Among us tax cattle. They know how to divide us. And that is exactly what they're doing, and we eat it up. But back on topic. I'll save the your favorite president sucks thing for next episode. But Joe, on a serious note, did Biden shut down the Keystone? I mean, wouldn't that have an effect on price? So now we're getting into federal policies that can affect gas prices. And by the way, if you're saying that statement or if you read it on social media, which you no doubt will, you'd still be incorrect. Let me explain why. Okay, the Keystone Pipeline, it exists, been running, is running, not shut down, okay? What people are referring to is the Keystone XL expansion, all right? And that's essentially a pipeline system that they're going to add on to the existing Keyline, hence Keystone XL, okay? The prices you're seeing now, little to nothing, probably nothing to do with that. And the reason why is pretty simple. You may remember that earlier I mentioned presidents can have a long-term effect on gas prices. Federal policy, Congress puts in policies, presidents are signing these executive orders, just like Biden did with this one. That can have a long-term effect. Keystone's a perfect example, though. Why is that not a factor in prices right now? The Keystone XL is basically a proposed expansion of existing pipeline that transports oil from Canada to the Gulf Coast. Okay? Notice I said proposed there. In other words, it wasn't there before. Okay? This Keystone XL thing has been an ordeal for probably 15 years now. So they're a Canadian company, formerly TransCanada. Now they're like TC Oil and Gas or something. I don't know. But you'll see TransCanada. That's the old name of the company. I think there was so much bad pub with that name. They changed it. Probably a good move. But anyway, like I said, this has been going on since like '08, folks. Okay? This ain't nothing new. What happened is Obama denied them a permit for that new expansion, the Keystone XL. Trump then got in office and approved it, right? But then what happens? They should start construction, right? They were planning to. What happens? Litigation all over the place. I'm talking lawsuits out the wazoo. Why? A lot of them had to do with eminent domain. Now, what is eminent domain? Eminent domain is where the government basically tells you, for the good of everybody, we're going to force you to sell your land to us at market value, aka an appraiser that we choose, and you don't have a choice in the matter. Your land will now become our land, and we don't care how much you object to it. Okay, so they got hit with a bunch of those lawsuits, totally stalled starting construction. Then, of course, Biden rescinds that construction permit in his first few weeks, so that's off the table now. But by the time he did that, they had constructed, I think the figure was 7 to 10, not even 10% of the new pipeline. Okay. So very little was even started by the time Biden took office and scrapped this construction permit. But let's just say no lawsuits occurred. Let's say Biden never scrapped their construction permit. Everything went totally according to plan in best case scenario. Best estimate, according to their own company, would be that the pipeline would be active or working in 2023 is when it go operational. So, no, that is not having any effect on your gas prices, other than maybe some pessimism in those futures trading. Okay, so I'm burned out, y'all. I'm burned out on gas prices. Um, I'm burned out of people posting nonsense about gas prices on Facebook. So let's move on. That's what you need to know about gas prices. Now, if you hate a president or somebody so much that you still want to blame gas prices on them or some grand conspiracy that they're raising gas price, go ahead, man. I give up. Some people just gonna do what they want to do. But that, what we just talked about, is really what's going on. So, like I said, let's move on. Done with gas prices. Let's talk about that word you keep hearing with every other commodity, good, and service: inflation. Mm. What what is inflation? Why under Biden are prices of everything going up? Right? Has to be his fault. Let's get into it. We're going to go basic here. We're going to learn it step by step. And I'm going to explain to you why we're seeing the prices we're seeing. Um, Lumber, gas, groceries, utilities, rent, clothes, even. Man, everything. What is happening right now, right? Like, can't even afford to live anymore, bro. Everything is so expensive. So what we're seeing now is a result of a couple of decades worth of poor monetary policy by your ever loving federal government. And also included in that, every single president since you were playing GoldenEye on that Nintendo 64. Or, really, for most of us, even before we were a jizz tadpole swimming in the great unknown. This has been going on for years, and it's been building up to this point that we're seeing now. Okay. I honestly have no issues with any reason that anyone wants to hate on a president, right? As long as you're learning who our true enemy is. But here's my pet, because there's plenty to hate on any of them for, especially Biden. Oh, he's bad. He's real bad. But my problem comes when people use situations like this to diss on one and act like their president was a complete opposite. Yep, godsend. All this bad stuff because of this president. My president had things going. No, because that distracts you from the true enemy. The true enemy doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat. It's the government. And by the end of the next episode, I think 90% of y'all are going to agree with me of why that is. But let's don't get distracted. They're both bad. The prices we're seeing now aren't because of one dude that's been in office in 2 years. It's been going on. All right, let's touch on it. They're all to blame. Let's go back to Jogu Econ 101. What is inflation? In essence, inflation is the increase in cost of goods and services in an economy, which we're obviously seeing at a massive rate now, right now. So, basic terms, that's what it is. But what causes that? What causes the prices of goods and services to increase? Well, glad you asked. What's happening in our situation is that our money supply is being increased without our economic output rising at an equal rate. So, money supply increasing, economic output remaining the same. Okay? That's essentially what's happening. Now, how are they increasing the money supply? You'd be shocked to know it's as simple of an answer as they just print it like it's going out of style. They literally got a money printer and they're like knocking it out, sheet after sheet. Okay? I'm going to put up a chart right now just to show you the value of our dollar over time. And I think you'll notice the trend on this. Okay? So take a look at this and then you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see why we're having inflation, right? Because our dollar value is completely eroding. Therefore, just because the value of our dollar decreases doesn't mean the prices of goods and services decrease, right? So they still cost X amount of value, but our dollar no longer holds that amount of value. It holds this much, so you have to pay more of it. Hence why things are getting more expensive. Now, why is the money supply growing? In short, it's because this thing we call the Fed, which is our version of a central bank, figured out they could ease economic hardship, like recessions, things that they caused for the most part by printing more money. It's literally called quantitative easing. Okay? So they start learning they can print all this money and all the bad stuff that they caused to happen in the economy, it kind of makes it not as bad. Now, if you're a president, right, and you're campaigning, I'm going to eliminate the national debt in X amount of years. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. What actually happens is if a president were to get in there and tell the truth, they're going to be like, folks, we've been messing up. We got to cut the spending. We got to cut the money printing to nothing. We're going to have to let interest rates rise. Times are going to be hard under my administration. I'll be honest with you. Have you ever heard any president say that? Biden, Trump, Obama, all huge advocates of forcing the Fed to print more money and keep interest rates low. Because who wants that under their administration? Remember, all these presidents are trying to sell us that under them things are going to be good. The American people are going to be. Little did we know it's a house of cards, man, and it's coming tumbling down. Now, whether you want to, blame whoever's in office, which it wouldn't matter if Republican or Democrat. If you want to blame whoever's in office for this, fine. But facts are there, folks. You can look at the spending. You can look at the quantitative easing throughout each presidency, and you'll quickly figure out they all had a hand in it. Okay, so let's not play coy here. They're all to blame. Look at this chart. This kind of proves my point, but I'm going to put up a chart right now showing our national debt by year. Okay, that is incomplete. The figure currently is over $30 trillion. Now tell me, looking at this chart, which president do you think did good for America by not enslaving us in more debt? You seeing the trend here? And don't get it twisted, man. All these other side issues and these things that we like to make, big presentations about, in contrast to our national debt in that situation, minute, almost irrelevant, man. Why? Because first, who's going to pay this back, right? Over 30 trillion. Somebody has to pay that money back. Sometimes you'll see a person that maybe doesn't understand Well, we just tell them we ain't paying. It's not quite that simple, okay? If we need to do an episode on that, I'll do that as well. But who pays this back? Our kids. Us, our kids, our grandkids, their kids, their kids. The list goes on. If you pay taxes in this country right now, you owe over $241,000 to the government. So that's no joke. Taxpayers in this country at the current debt levels owe over $241,000 to the government. That's our obligation. That's only getting worse. It's only getting worse under Biden. Only got worse under Trump, Obama, Bush Jr., all of them. Okay, this ain't one dude. I mean, yeah, I hate them, but it's a collection. Okay, and we're starting to reap what we sowed right now. Okay. Um, Basically, though, what that's saying is the government and the presidents that you love have essentially taken out a $30 trillion loan, and guess who's a co-signer on it? You and me, right? No matter, I didn't sign nothing. Doesn't matter. Government spends on your behalf, and go ahead and tell them you're not going to pay taxes and see what happens, right? That's why this is an important issue. Another reason, inflation, what we're seeing now. By them borrowing, spending all that money, they've had to print more money. They've had to keep interest rates low. Boom, we're seeing inflation. And like I said, those worthless pieces of paper in your pocket or wallet, they're steadily going down. It's only getting worse. Okay. Another reason is, what if our money becomes worthless? What if we're taken off from the petrodollar, the world currency, which is in talks right now if you're keeping up? What happens if our money turns like Venezuela? We reach hyperinflation where it takes $6 million, to buy a loaf of bread. Not out of the realm of possibility, folks. I mean, we literally have historical evidence of this happening in places like Venezuela and others. Uh, Even your magical government, or the government you think is magical, that just prints money like it's going out of style, guess what else? We we couldn't afford to fund a military for defense. Okay, um, without value in our currency, we can't just say, here's $1 million, build me a tank and hire me some military. Doesn't work like that, man. If the value is not in that piece of paper, then it's worthless. Okay. So yeah, we're headed down a super dark path right now, man. Unfortunately, we've all been holding our government's hand on this path for a long time. Okay. Crazier thing is that they've actually manipulated us into thinking our side of the government is good and the other side is the root of all our problems. So we just kind of been willingly skipping down this path into really, really bad news to come. Okay. It's like that definition of insanity thing. I mean, we keep doing the same thing over and over every 4 to 8 years, expecting a different result, and all the while willingly hand feeding our own demise. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Um, but again, we'll touch more on that next episode. Let's get back to inflation. We talked about the increase in money supply. Um, so why are we just now seeing inflation? Like, why didn't it happen, I don't know, 3 years ago? In truth, the inflation has been here for several years. It's just been hiding in other places. Asset prices, stock market. Uh, what I mean by that is, you see, the Fed, presidents, Congress, the evil cabal of whoever's pulling the puppet strings up there, they realized that they could increase the money supply through the quantitative easing, um, but they could also dictate interest rates, right? So if the market's saying, man, rates need to rise, we need to encourage more saving than spending, they're like, nah, 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 we can play with that. Let's keep the interest rates low so people keep borrowing money to spend at low interest rates, and it keeps encouraging this. So we just keep money flowing through the economy, right? It's a good thing, right? No. A central bank should not determine interest rates. The market should. And the market will tell you what interest rates should be if you need to encourage saving, spending, investing, whatever. Right? So by keeping it low all that time, all these companies' values are super, super overinflated because you're just putting this monopoly money circulating in the economy, right? Um, but like I said, hiding in the stock market. What do you mean by that? I believe basically that the Fed policies have led to all these companies and their overinflated values. I do not have an optimistic outlook for the stock market. I do believe that long term we'll overcome it, but I think it's going to be real bad. I think it's going to make '08, '09 look like a trip to Disneyland, okay? Because we're on a massive bubble right now. Anybody remember during the Trump administration? This always struck me as kind of weird. You know, people are like, well, look at my 401k under this president or that president. And by the way, stock market's still been blowing up, right? Nothing's changed. But to me, that was kind of a clue that the inflation was in these asset prices and equities and stuff, right? Um, Remember during the Trump administration, small businesses shut down, people going out of business left and right. Not the big massive corps. We provided plenty of bailout money for them. But the mom and pops, the small business people were struggling during the shutdown. They couldn't work, man. They had us locked in a box, right? Uh, so, with all that negativity happening on Main Street, not the big corporate world, the Amazons, the Walmarts, and all that, which obviously were allowed to stay open and thrive, should the stock market have taken a pretty big hit during a global shutdown? Seems like it should have, right? Considering the circumstances. But that's a big negative, man. You saw a small blip, I believe, you know, March, I think. You saw a dip in the stock market, obviously. But man, by June, July, summertime, stock market prices back at historical highs. So, uh, yeah, it seemed a little strange to y'all that the stock market never really took a hit that kept going along with the economy shutdown. To me, that's kind of proof that this inflation and the we've been seeing it in those asset prices because no president's going to want the stock market to tumble while they're in there, right? So they enact these policies, low interest rates, the printing of money to just keep it circulating, keep these companies getting on that bubble, right? Um, think back to '08. What happened when we had that little crash, right? Uh, you remember what happened? Banks started failing, real estate market plummeted. Um, the proper thing to do at that time, and that was under Obama, would have been to take our hits, man. That was a minor pop, a little deflation of the bubble that we've been growing on, and we should have let that hit. We should have let that market correction hit fully. Let the banks fail that made poor fiscal decisions, not bail them out with our tax money, which is what we did. Let them fail. Let the housing market make its correction. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck. But you know what? We could have actually corrected and gotten back on track. Is that what we did? Hell no, man. Obama said fire up the printers. Brrr. Rates, jack them down. That's instead what we did. So we never recovered from that. So what do you think this next bubble that we never let deflate from '08, '09? What do you think's gonna happen when this thing fully hits? And it's starting right now. Like we're seeing it right now. It's gonna be bad. But Obama, Trump, Biden, every single one of those presidents blew the gates off of spending and adding to our national debt. So yeah, tell me which one you want to blame. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. Let's fight them. But don't act like it was one side or the other. They've all done this. Okay, so if you want to know the honest truth of the inflation we're seeing, that's why. All right? Not one man to blame. Maybe one man more than another one or whatever, but none of them have helped this situation, and they've all led to what we're seeing now. So then they're making for like 2 decades now. But the problem is the Fed's out of tricks, right? Like the printing money is leading to major historical inflation. So that's kind of tapped out, that little tactic. Interest rates. You gotta let them rise, man. So what's happening? The Fed's gonna try and inch them up a little bit by a little bit, but it's coming. Okay, we're gonna be in a bind. Over 30 trillion in debt. Fed's out of tools. They can't hide this anymore. Presidents can't hide anymore. Um, I mean, each president that we've elected in the past, since Bush Jr., has spent more in their tenure than the president before them, than their predecessor. So, I, I mean, how do you see that pattern ending, right? Biden gonna blow the doors off Trump. Trump beat Obama for compared to his first 4 years in office. Obviously, Obama had 8, so apples to apples. But Obama doubled Bush's. Do you see the trend, man? This is not good. How do you think it ends? How do you think it ends? We're gonna talk about how we think it ends a little bit next episode, okay? So get ready to go to Wonderland, and we're gonna see how far the rabbit hole goes. The next episode is titled "The Greatest Conspiracy